and welcome to Giant Views at Seed World International. My name is Sonia Begeman. I'm the editorial director at Seed World Group, and today I am thrilled to be joined by Garth Hodges. Garth is the vice president of the BASF North American seed business. Garth, I am so happy to have you with us today. It's pretty hot in Canada right now. I know you guys have this record heat wave. But on to maybe a little bit more fun topic. Can you tell me a little bit more about what you do and about BASF, what they're doing right now?
Sure, thanks, Sonia. Yes, it's a real privilege to be here. And yeah, it is warm. I can just see 36 degrees Celsius, and I guess in Fahrenheit that's over 100. But no, it's good to be here, and I really appreciate the opportunity. So I guess to answer the question, BASF at its core really is all about innovation, and we're dedicated to providing solutions for growers, and these solutions take many forms. For example, crop protection products. Of course, we're talking about seeds and traits. Seed treatment is another big part of our portfolio, but I think more importantly, it's just the connection with growers and making certain that we can put all of this together and provide those solutions. So for me personally, I have the privilege of leading a rather passionate group of colleagues passionate about agriculture. And we're actually the largest global canola seed company in the world. And we have a significant presence in vegetable seeds, as well as a presence in cotton seeds and soybean. And quite recently, of course, we've been very, very much involved in a new venture over the last decade or so in hybrid wheat. So you can really see we're really, positioned in most of these. And for me personally, yes, I lead all of our field crops in North America.
Now, I'm glad you mentioned hybrid wheat. That's one that it excites me because wheat has almost been the redheaded stepchild crop to so many others for so long, just not getting that research attention, not getting the dollars. Talk to me about what you're doing with hybrid wheat.
Yeah, it is exciting, and I guess there's a good reason why it has been, as you call it, the stepchild in the past, because it's hard, it's a challenge, and it's been a challenge for many. And what's really exciting was the opportunity to actually acquire the germplasm, and then to be in a program. So I would say right now it's very much involved in trying to solve all the conundrums, all the difficult steps along the way. And of course, we've been a lot of investment in germplasm, trying to understand breeding, different hybridization systems. And now we're actually, and I'll be going out to the field tomorrow to have a look at some of our seed production, because that's always been a big challenge in hybrid wheat, is to be able to say, how are we going to do seed production? So what are we doing? We're actually facing every one of these big challenges in the hybrid wheat process. So it's exciting because in many cases, you're actually breaking new ground. You're doing something new. And as I stated before, the nice thing about being with BASF is at the core of BASF is this insatiable desire for innovation. So that's kind of like what we're doing now, facing every challenge that there is in hybrid wheat, and that's exciting.
It's so great to hear that passion in your voice when you talk about everything you're doing at BASF. You're clearly excited, which makes me super curious. Are you from a farm? Is that what got you started in the seed and chemical world? Or, how did you get into ag specifically?
So that's interesting. No, I don't. But it was probably I want to be, I want to be a farmer. I want to be, close to the land. And this was a way in which I could, thinking back, I've kind of always been interested in science and probably science fiction. I just think of all the books that I read as a child, there's always been science fiction. Arthur C. Clarke comes to mind immediately when you mention my childhood. But there was maybe a pivotal moment when I guess 11 or 12 years old, when my parents gave me for my birthday a microscope. And that was probably the moment when I looked through that microscope and I saw a whole new world out there, a real world, a moving world, a world of science. I don't know. It just, the proverbial bug bit. And I went to study on in agriculture at Stellenbosch University in South Africa. I just loved every minute of it, and genetics and, biology, plant pathology. It was just it was almost as if, that the passion, came alive. And after university, I actually joined an ag company and started doing research. Um, you know, Maybe, thinking back, I got an incredible opportunity to go as a family to go and live and work in Germany, where we, really got involved in the science of, new technologies. And it was the beginning of, you know, herbicide tolerance, insect resistance. It was almost the birth of it in kind of like the late 90s. Spent some time in France before coming to Canada in 2002 to head up the canola seed business. It was a lot smaller when we came, but maybe that was kind of like my first real, okay, now I'm in the seed business, and then living the seed business from there. So I guess always a passion. Some moments in life created opportunities, and it's just a matter of grasping them with both hands when they arrive.
And what a rich background to have gone from South Africa to Germany to France to Canada, and great for your family too, just to get to absorb all of those different environments and learn in each one of them. That's really
Absolutely,
exciting.
you're right. It's been such a privilege to be able to build all those rich experiences together, and I guess that's exactly what plant breeding is all about, right? The heterosis, it's bringing together all of those rich experiences, that different genetics that's in there, and building something that wasn't there before. I guess life gives you those opportunities as well.
Absolutely. And it's hearing you talk about these plant breeding techniques, and that comparison you made there makes me curious. Is it the advances you're making in things like hybrid wheat, or the breeding advances that you're making through maybe some of these new breeding techniques? Is it those things, or is there something else that you think is the most exciting thing happening in the seed industry, or coming to the seed industry right now?
Yeah, there's so much for us to be excited about in the seed industry. I guess the one part I always go back to is we're in a pretty awesome cause. I mean, just think about it. We're living in a world where we're making something. We're making food or fuel or fiber. We're actually doing something for society. So I think the cause is pretty exciting and pretty awesome. Yes, I would say that, from that point, I cannot lie and say that the commodity prices are really exciting right now. And it's almost like the society is for once saying thank you to our farmers and our growers, and saying, hey, we really appreciate what you're doing for us. So I guess that to me is a rather exciting part. But yes, you're right. If I think of innovation, when I started in 2002, it was a big deal for us to sequence the canola genome. Like, it was a big deal. And we were actually the first company to sequence the canola genome. And it was a big deal of money too. But now that technology is routine. I mean, we're sequencing parental lines now, and you don't give it a second thought. But yes, you're right. You're absolutely right. I mean, just the leaps and bounds in innovation and the things that we can do. I guess if only we're sometimes allowed to do it, if society would allow us. But nonetheless, yes, you're absolutely right. Uh, the unique innovations, the things we can do in breeding today that we could never dream about in the past. Those are really, really exciting. At this point in time, in the seed breeding world. Yes.
Now, you brought up something that I think we have to talk about, and that is the challenges. And so, you have this really unique perspective in that, you're managing North America. So you have Canada, who has a very different perspective from the United States, where I live. And then you lived in Germany and France and in South Africa. So you've gotten a really wide variety of perspectives when it comes to new technologies in agriculture. And so, you mentioned if we're allowed to do so. So if we're allowed to make these advances in genetics, if we're allowed to make these advances in genomics, talk to me about that. Talk to me about that challenge of what are we going to be allowed to do? And, from your perspective, you're in Canada and you deal with Canada and North America the most right now. So Canada versus US, what's going on there?
Yeah, I think the clearly Canada is a large export country, and U.S. exports some of the commodities. You're right, but primarily it's very much can consume a lot of its technology and its crops. But I think for Canada, it's really so dependent on its export markets that it's almost the export markets that are dictating what kind of technologies and innovations you can use. So I think that's a really important part. But if I think about there are these macro challenges, and then maybe I'll speak a little bit about some of the micro challenges. But in a macro world, one of my concerns actually is we are so fragmented as an industry, but yet the challenge of societal and environmental acceptance is actually quite consolidated and unique. But we have all these associations. We have different crops, and it just seems like we're fragmented too much. So that's a concern to me. And the question is, how can we consolidate some of that? And it's okay to have a favorite sports team, right? And you will have your hockey team or your rugby team or your soccer team, right? With the soccer that's going on right now. So you're allowed to have those passions, but I think as an industry, as a seed industry, there are some things that are bigger than a sports team. And I would say that the societal challenges to the use of innovation, the way of farming, the Green Deal in Europe, I really think that that's something that the industry needs to think about. And then on a micro level, Sonia, I would say that the challenges on a micro level is Mother Nature. By golly, Mother Nature is throwing us so many curveballs. Whether it's the weather or whether it's climate change or weed resistance or diseases coming out. As a plant breeder, you look at all these and you can either be excited for all the challenges, or you can say, I'm going to give up, and I think these are the parts that are interesting and are important to our seed industry.
All right, you brought up the weather, and the agronomy person in me, the one who's gotten dirty boots and scouted fields more times than I care to admit. I've got to ask, you've got this record-breaking heat in Canada. We've seen droughty conditions this year. Then we've seen, at least in my area, just torrential downpour here recently. What's going on with your seed crops, your canola, your wheat, things like that, with these challenges? Give me that seed crop update.
Yeah, it's hard, and it's harsh. And like I said, tomorrow I'll be going and having a look at some of the crops. But I have some canola field just outside my little bit of land here, and they are looking terrible. They are thirsty, and you feel sad for them a lot. No, so what's going on? There's no doubt. Let's be very empathetic with growers. Whether it's too much, too little. But just like Goldilocks and the Three Bears, we just haven't found that spot which says, just right. It's too hot, too cold, too dry, too wet. It's hard. So what's happening? Yeah, the crops are suffering. We're doing everything we possibly can. I think the important thing in the seed industry, Sonia, is we've been through these times. Maybe not these extremes, but first of all, we're very resilient. Secondly, I think we prepare well. So things like strategic inventory, strategic stocks. Of course, in the seed business, fortunately, we have something called contra season and the Southern Hemisphere. Whether it be Australia or Chile. So I think as far as, if growers are listening to this, they should be really proud and they should feel confident in that the seed industry understands these risks and invests in mitigating some of these risks. So right now, you're absolutely right. It's looking sad and poor, and it's really hard. But we are going to do everything we possibly can to make up for it, whether it be a strategic stock or a contra season, so that the growers will be number one, and we will take care of them.
Now, I think I could probably sit and talk and ask questions all day because I'm really enjoying our conversation, Garth, but I know that you have things to do. So I think just my last question I'll throw at you is, you know, this Seed World international audience that we have everyone from CEOs to field salespeople to everything in between, plant breeders, scientists, you name it, they're here because they want to learn more. And I guess my question to you is, if you could give, anyone uh, the best piece of advice you have ever received in your professional career that might help them in theirs, what's that best piece of advice you've ever gotten?
Yeah, that's an interesting one because throughout my career, the good news is I've had a lot of advice, and I've received a lot of advice. The bad news is I've received a lot of advice. I think the one I think back 20 years ago, I had a manager, John Wistrich, and John taught me a very valuable lesson, and he gave me a very valuable piece of advice. Now, at the time, I thought it was the worst piece of advice ever. But over time, that advice grew on me, and I realized just how important it was. And Sonia, it's very simple: focus. If you chase two rabbits, you won't catch either of them. And I think that's been really a hallmark over the years. I always thought, if I can give John this long list of things and be impressing with all the things I'm going to do, he kept saying relentlessly, but what's the most important one? What's the one that's really important? And then he'd say, and what have you done about it? So if I had to give advice, I think we, as an industry or in every discipline, we got to choose, where it is we want to focus. And I think it is about, and harnessing all of this great innovation that's there. And it's, in my situation, it's now focusing on the legacy. What's the legacy that we as leaders are going to leave there? Because it is going to be the next generation. It's the next generation that's going to be the one that's going to take all this new technology that's out there. How can we create an environment that's exciting for that generation? Because they're the ones that understand things like artificial intelligence, automation, the digital world. I don't. But that's the generation that we're going to need to create that exciting environment. They're going to say, I want to work in agriculture. I want to apply all of this learning to the seed business, to breeding, to innovation, because quite frankly, innovation is the core of our being. And it's that little seed that has so much potential in it, right? And it's the potential we need to generate in the next generation, as well.
It's so wild. The seed industry is so fast paced. That's really solid advice. You got to find your passion, focus on it, and then as you find that job, really prioritize. That's really good advice. And you mentioned it all starts with a seed. It's smaller. A lot of these seeds are smaller than the tip of a pencil eraser, but it is the foundation of life, of everything, because everything we eat, everything we wear usually comes from a seed. So it is of critical importance. So, well, Garth, I could, like I said, just sit and talk to you all day, but I'm going to respect your time and respect the time of our viewers. So thank you so much, Garth, for your time. And thank you to everyone who watched with us today. I hope you'll check out the rest of our Seed World International platform. We have several other giant views for you to watch, other experts in the industry. And in addition to that, in our Insights tab, we have lots more information about hot topics like science literacy, microplastics, and other really great, interesting topics that you might want to learn more about. So I encourage you to check it out. In the meantime, thank you all so much for watching. Thank you again, Garth, for your time, and we'll talk to you later.
Thank you for the opportunity.